Welcome to Lost Love Mystery, where every story unravels a secret. So, let's dive into another story. My wife and I both met when we were in our mid-20s at a club. I was there with my best friend, let's call him David, and I saw her from across the room. She was by far the best-looking woman in the building, and I wanted to shoot my shot with her. There were so many other men trying to get with her, but somehow I was the one she chose to be with. Every day since then she had chosen to be with me, and I was very grateful for that up until recently. We had been married for 8 years, and everything was going well. We put off having children so we could focus on our careers, and we were finally in a place where we could try. Before we started trying to have our first kid, my wife and I wanted to have one last vacation on our own to sort of send off our life before kids. We invited David and his wife, let's call her Kelly, along with us. All 4 of us were looking forward to the trip for a while. We were going to the Caribbean and really looking forward to the wonderful views and all the activities we had planned. Leading up to the trip, my wife was kind of nervous about it. I didn't fully understand why she had flown on planes countless times before. I tried to comfort her as much as I could and tell her that the trip was going to be fine, but it didn't really seem to work much. The time came for all 4 of us to leave, and we got there without a hitch and settled into our hotel rooms. We actually had a joining room which we all got a cake out of first. We made sure to lock our ends so our friends didn't walk into our room uninvited. Part of me thought that this trip was going to be almost like a second honeymoon for my wife and me. I was expecting it to be a little more passionate and intimate than it turned out to be. She wasn't really too eager about having intimate with me the first couple of nights we were there. She told me that she was jet-lagged and just not feeling like herself, so I didn't pressure her into anything. All of us had managed to fully take the time off work for the vacation with the exception of one meeting that I had during the middle of it. It was something that I could hop on a Zoom call for a couple of hours and be done with. On the day of my meeting, we spent the morning at the breakfast buffet that I left to have my meeting. In the middle of it, I could hear shuffling around in the room next door. I assumed someone just went in to grab something, but I didn't think too much about it. When it was over, I wanted the beach to meet up with everyone. Kelly wasn't there when I arrived. It was just my wife and David. They were laughing about something, and I asked him what was so funny, but they just told me that it was nothing. They mentioned that Kelly went up to the room to get some rest because she had a headache. David was my best friend, and I trusted my wife, so I never suspected anything was amiss. They were friendlier than they normally were with each other while we were on the beach, but I just thought they might have had a few too many drinks already. All of us went to dinner later that day, and I thought I noticed David touching my wife. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. It looked like he patted her on them, but while they were walking by each other, I have been drinking, so part of me kind of assumed that I might have mistaken something that happened. I didn't make a big deal out of it. We went through the rest of dinner, and I was a little bit on edge about what I saw, so I wasn't as jovial as I normally was. My wife and David kept looking at each other and smiling. It felt hilly, but I was starting to worry that my wife and David were up to something. We got back to our hotel room, and I asked my wife about it when we were alone. I was drunk by that point, and my wife was as well. She told me nothing was happening. I explained the but path that I thought I saw, and she told me that it didn't happen. I saw what I did, but I didn't want to believe it. I convinced my wife that I was right with David, myself that I was drunk and paranoid, and it would be best if I just want to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night, and my wife wasn't there. I looked around for her, and I didn't see her anywhere. I got up and started looking for her, and saw that the door to the adjoining room was open just a crack. I knew for a fact we kept it locked, so had I been deliberately opened by my wife. I peeked inside David and Kelly's room, and saw that Kelly was asleep in the bed and David was missing. The memories of the night before had come back to me, and I started to put the pieces together. And I imagined that David and my wife were off somewhere together. Then I noticed the light to the large walk-in closet was on. I listened carefully for a moment, and I could hear very soft, stifled moans alongside some quiet shuffling coming from inside of the closet. I didn't want to open the door because I already had a pretty good sense of what I was going to see, but I knew that I needed to. I tipped over as quietly as I could and stood in front of the door for a second before yanking it open. I saw exactly what I had anticipated, but that didn't make it hurt any less. My wife and David were in the middle of having intimate with each other. When I opened the door and my wife saw me, she screamed. Kelly jolted awake in bed and yelled at me about being in her room. But then she realized what was really happening. Kelly stormed over to the closet and immediately started screaming at David about what he was doing. She mentioned how she was right not to have wanted to come on the trip with my wife and told him that they were done. I was really confused about what she was saying because they didn't seem hesitant about joining us on the trip at all. I asked for clarification, and Kelly just looked at David and my wife, waiting for them to elaborate. My wife finally spoke up, and she confessed to me that she and David had slept together once before back home. David told Kelly about it because he felt bad, and Kelly was able to forgive him as long as it didn't happen again. They both said that it was a mistake, and it just happened, and they regretted it. David and Kelly both promised not to tell me about what happened, because they didn't know how I was going to react. So Kelly didn't want to go on vacation with the woman that slept with her husband. I could completely understand that. What I couldn't understand was why everybody thought it was okay to leave me in the dark about it. I was the only one who didn't know, and I felt foolish for trusting David and my wife. I thought they made me look like an idiot. I went back to my room, and my wife tried to explain it to me, telling me that it really meant nothing and that it was just intimate. I didn't understand how that was justifying anything she said. Sleeping with somebody with no emotional connection didn't make it any better. She still cheated on me, and that was what I cared about. David came into the room and tried to explain his side of everything to me, and I ended up just punching him in the face. I do regret that because it wasn't exactly the most mature way to handle the situation, but I was in the heat of the moment, and it felt right at the time. I ended up leaving the vacation the following morning and leaving everybody else behind. I went home to begin the divorce proceedings before my wife returned. I didn't want anything to do with her, and I didn't want anything to do with David or Kelly. Kelly came back shortly after I did, and she stopped by my house to apologize for keeping the secret. Apparently, my wife had promised her that she was going to tell me, and Kelly thought that she did. Otherwise, she wouldn't have ever kept silent about it. I believed what she said. She had no reason to come over and lie to my face about it. My wife and David didn't come back home for an additional 3 days. I was already upset about the cheating, but the fact that they stayed behind on the vacation for an additional 3 days after everything happened was infuriating. I can only imagine the types of things they were doing while there for 3 days alone. I talked to Kelly after they came home and asked her what she was going to do. She told me that she had forgiven him once for cheating on her and wasn't able to do it again. She planned on leaving him and moving out of their house. I ended up divorcing my wife, and Kelly divorced David. My wife and David tried to date each other for a while after everything happened, and from what I understand, it ended very badly. David cheated on my wife with a woman for his work and ruined their relationship. I just felt like that was karma coming back to get her in the end, though. I am now happy away from both of them. I do check in with Kelly from time to time, but I try to stay away from her because it just reminds me of the times I had with David and my wife. But I'm now dating a wonderful girl, and I realize that I'm going to have a lot of issues in my future relationships, but I'm trying to let myself be vulnerable and open again. Thanks for watching Lost Love Mystery. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more hidden truths.